Quick announcement before we get into the interview, folks. My secret opening of the Kente cloth store was yesterday. It hasn't even been 24 hours, and guess what? People are buying. What? It was a secret opening for my patrons and my YouTube members. Folks, if you're watching this right now, it's no longer a secret. You know about it. Vision-reality.com and get your Kente cloth today. Alrighty, let's get into the interview. Hey folks, I am Leslie Jones. This is video number 2 of International Investing. I have here Joe. Now, say your last name, please.
Hatagwa.
Joe Hatagwa. Folks, we're going to talk about Sierra Leone. Last time was Dominican Republic. Today is Sierra Leone. Let's get straight into it. Joe.
Yes.
Why Sierra Leone?
It's a great question. So both my parents were born and raised in Sierra Leone. They met in the States. I was conceived in the United States, so American citizen. I got my dual citizenship in January of 2019. I started the process at the end of 2018. But yeah, it's my home country. And so I wanted to do more there. I've been going since 2007. Okay. So I had some, I went for a funeral, 2009. So I went for a funeral, and it was the first time I ever thought about legacy. You know, there was 2 instances while I was there that really made me think about it. The first is I was there for a funeral for my aunt, and that was in Freetown, the capital city. And I met a lot of people who she impacted. And they kept saying to me how lucky I was to have been related to her and how they wished that they had been related to her to be able to get the gems that they got from her when she would do stuff on the radio and things in public. So that was one. And then the second week I went to Bo, where my grandfather was chief. And so getting to see his impact on people who are much older now, but they were really young when he passed, and how they were calling me Chief Bemba and all that kind of stuff. And seeing how his legacy can live so far beyond his death. I mean, he died, I think in the 60s. Yeah, mid 60s. And so the fact that there are still people today who talk about him and his influence, I thought was really important, and it was an eye-opener for me. And so I decided that I wanted to leave a legacy when I'm long gone. And the best place to do it is the place in which my parents are from, and that was why Sierra Leone.
That was a good answer. My goodness. So
I've been saying it a lot.
I'm a sucker for legacy. That's how I ended up in Ghana, because of legacy.
Yeah.
So you said it was the first time you thought of legacy. You could have went anywhere in West Africa, even in the States.
Sure.
So I know you said the impact of your, I guess, ancestors. Yep. Right? So what do you see yourself doing to continue that legacy in Sierra Leone?
That's a good question. So I think one of our biggest challenges, and it's not just in Sierra Leone, it's everywhere in the world, you notice that people are really dependent on the government. You know, and they always complain that the government doesn't do enough. The government doesn't have enough jobs. You see it here in the States, even as a lefty liberal, it's in the States, people always talk about how the government's not involved, not doing enough. People say that in Ghana, people say it in Sierra Leone. But really where you can have the biggest impact on the continent of Africa today is in the private sector and in business.
Exactly.
And so, a couple of friends of mine came to me with an idea for an incubator or an accelerator for startups, and to do it as a nonprofit, so that you can raise money and help these businesses grow without the expectation of having a return. And so I thought it was a great idea. And so I'm, chairman of the board of Launchpad Africa, where we actually do help startups get off the ground. They get an understanding of financial literacy and, how to hire people, how to do marketing, all those kinds of things that are really important to help these businesses employ people, so that people aren't as dependent on the government. And so that's a really big passion of mine. I also do that in Ghana and in Nigeria for other accelerators, but those are for-profit ones. So I'm working with Google for startups, I'm working with MEST Africa, and I'm working with Launchpad Africa. And then I also work with 2 other startups individually that I reached out to long before I moved. I've been working with them as well. So yeah, for me, it's through the private sector. That's how I'm doing it.
I kind of want to change this whole interview now. Like, we're going to talk about international investing, but now I want to know more about that. So, folks, we're going to do probably other interviews.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
What you just said right now, everyone needs to know.
Sure.
Okay, but let's get back on track.
Sure.
So, when it comes, because I'm Sierra Leonean, I took the test.
Yep.
I looked into Sierra Leone first before I went to Ghana, because I could be naturalized.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when it comes to the entry to purchasing land in Sierra Leone, how was that for you? Were you a citizen before you purchased land, or were you considered a foreigner?
Yeah, so I was actually a citizen, so I did check into this. So I was a citizen, so that made it a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
But you can purchase land as a foreigner, but there's a process. A lot of people go through like a citizen. So people have done it with relationships. People have done it as like silent partner, and they own a portion of the business or whatever. Or you can do it through a business. So I've talked to people who've done it through a business. But for me, I was a citizen first. And so I actually bought land from family. So once I went through that process, I found out that my great-great-great-grandmother, her land, and grandparents, their land was being managed at this point by my mother, her siblings, and their cousins. And so they were planning to sell it to someone else. My mom did get first right of refusal since she's the oldest. And she and I talked about it, had already told her that I was looking to buy some property. And I was able to acquire the land from the family. So it was a little bit more simple than for most people, because we had a lawyer that was working for both sides. So this one lawyer just kind of did all the paperwork and did everything. My aunt was the one who was kind of like what you would consider like an executor of the estate, but she was basically just managing the whole process. And so basically I bought it from her. Her name was on the conveyance. And so I bought it from her, and now it's my name and my mother's name on the conveyance for the property now.
Attorney, folks. That's why I regret not getting a attorney from the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And so was it a gift? What was the cost?
It was not a gift.
So it's from family, but it wasn't free.
It wasn't free. I'm told that it was at a discount, slightly at a discount. It was about $12,000 just for the land itself.
And how big is the land?
It is 90 or so feet wide by like 70 or so feet long.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's like a town lot and 3/4, people generally say. So yeah, so I'm working on building a structure on the property and a guest house. The guest house is almost done now. So yeah, we put the windows in, the window guards, the door guards. We've gotten the tiling done. The walls have all been done. The roof is on, all of that. We just need to put doors on it, finish the electricity and the plumbing, get the plumbing done, sinks and stuff like that. But then it'll be ready. So by February, so in the next 4 months or so.
Gotcha. So it sounds like Airbnb?
Yeah, it'll definitely be an Airbnb, and also a place that I can stay in for extended periods of time. Right now, I spend money going to Sierra Leone, staying at different people's places. I can stay at some people's houses, but like, you kind of feel like you're out where you're welcome. You know, if you're somebody's place for a month and a half, it's a long time. I spent 2 months at one of my cousin's house, but she just recently got married, and you know, she has a stepchild now, so there's no extra space really, and I don't want to like be in their newly veritable house. Yeah,
also you're there like the third wheel.
Yeah, so I don't want to be in their space. And so yeah, so I pay for. I have a friend of mine who has an Airbnb by the beach, so I stay at her place. Nice. So I'll be renting it from her. But yeah, so yeah, that's why. So it'll be a place that I can stay in for an extended period of time, and then it'll be an Airbnb, and then we're working on the main house next. So there's some work that needs to be done on the property first. Once the guest house is done, I just wanted the guest house to be done and out the way so that I have a place to stay for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
Then we can start working on all the really, really major stuff, like digging the well.
It's gonna be off grid? Is that what you mean by
well,
that?
it will still be connected to the main water supply, but they only send water up there 2 days a week. And so it comes out slow.
Know.
Yeah. So because I have a caretaker on the land, and we added a pump to the main line.
Okay.
So like you can see the pump, and when the water comes, it comes, and so it's 2 days a week, and so we'll have our own water supply on land. And then electricity wise, it will be partially on grid, partially off the grid. So I am putting solar units on the building, but then I'm also connecting to the main grid, but 2 of the grids. So If one goes down, then the other one goes. If that one's down, then I have my solar power supply.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the exchange rate. How far does the dollar go in Sierra Leone? Salon.
Yeah, Salon. So as of right now, it is, so they just remunerated the currency. So it used to be 10,000 CDs to every $1. Sorry, 10,000 leones.
Oh, my God.
It used to be 10,000 leones to every $1.
What?
Now, if I'm not mistaken, it is like 1,500 leones to every $1. So they removed 3 zeros. So it's 1,500 leones to every $1. So yeah, I mean there were times where I was walking around with 4 million leones. I had 4 million leones one time.
Right.
4,000.
4,000. Oh, okay.
$4,000. Yeah. So I had 4 million leones at one point in time, which is a lot to be carrying around in cash. You know, like to have that much cash, like you know, it looks like a rap video.
Yeah.
You know, a music video. Yeah. There's a lot of cash, like bricks of cash. Just
Wow.
Yeah. So but yeah. So the currency it's constantly changing because the dollar has been able to remain stable because the Fed here in the United States does things to change interest rates and to keep the dollar the way it is. But people who have debt outside of the United States, which is most countries, and they do their debt in dollars, their currency tends to drop in its value. And that's what's happening in Sierra Leone. While inflation is rising, the currency is dropping in value, and so it makes it difficult for like building supplies. Like my building supplies are way more expensive now than they were when I started the process.
Wow. Now, do you need to import, export? Is everything already there?
Many things are there, and there are things that are imported by other companies. So some people import directly from a manufacturer, right? Okay. So I actually have a friend of mine who lives in the UK. Her and her mom are building, and they're importing from China. And so I'm trying to get a feel for what that material looks like once it gets there so that I know if that's what I want to do. But today, my sinks, toilets, tiles, and all of that came from an Indian company. They're shipping in from India, they're housing it there, and then they're selling it directly to consumers. And so my contractors worked with them forever. So that's what I'm using right now for some of the basics. For the main house, I may do some international shipping. We're still working out the details of what it'll look like.
Got you.
Yeah.
Now tell me, business-wise.
Sure.
For the folks that are watching that are thinking about Sierra Leone, is it a good business move in real estate to develop in Sierra Leone?
Yes, I think real estate's important no matter where you are in the world. I think you should buy real estate no matter where you are because it's not an infinite resource. It is a limited resource, and people continue to grow in terms of the population. So if you, right now, let's say you're not going to buy in a capital city somewhere. If you buy right outside the capital city, eventually that city will expand to the area that you're in. So like Ghana's a good example where it's called the Greater Accra region, right? At one point in time, East Legon, Chado, those weren't part of Accra, right? Those weren't considered part of Accra previously, but now they're considered part of the Greater Accra region. And so now you pay Accra prices.
A pretty penny.
Right. So, yeah. And so I know people who bought land 15, 20 years ago, and now they're reaping the benefits of that. And so now, if you buy land now, 15 to 20 years from now, you'll be able to reap the benefits. So yes, in that sense, yes. But will it be as much as like the United States or even in Ghana? No. But you'll still be able to generate some income with renters at one point if you have property on your land, or if you want to resell that land later on, you will make a profit for sure, 15, 20 years down the line. So it's definitely a good like long-term investment for sure.
Got you.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons why I declined Sierra Leone is because of the Civil War and where the economy is now regarding Sierra Leone.
In terms of how the country has recovered since, it's a really challenging place to be where you had military rule at one point in time. You have presidents who tend to be fearful of potential coups that will overthrow them from the government. I think that there's always some fear of that, and so they move accordingly. So like the presidential procession or whatever you call it is like a bunch of people with a bunch of guns. Bunch of cars.
Power. Has the power.
Yeah. And so, but I think, when you have a civil war like that, many people leave. Sierra Leone's biggest challenge is the brain drain, is what people call it. So some of our best and brightest minds leave the country and don't come back. So they'll go to school in the UK. I know people in Denmark, in the U.S. and Canada, and then don't come back until they're retired. And so what you have is folks who remain, who tend to be dependent on those who leave. And also you have folks who don't actually get a chance to see the outside world. And so that can be limiting sometimes in building business and infrastructure, because complacency can set in,
right?
And so, so I think that's what's led to some of the challenges building businesses in Sierra Leone, which is why most of the businesses there are nonprofit instead of for-profit businesses. But that is changing though.
Okay.
There's a large contingent of Generation X and millennials moving back, and Gen Z. I met some Gen Z folks who are moving back to the continent to help, and specifically in Sierra Leone, to start building businesses, to work in government, and to kind of get us back to our rightful place on the world stage. Sierra Leone was a location that many people from all over West Africa used to come to get to go to college, right?
I didn't know about that.
Frabé College. Yeah. So I think that we need to get us back there, and it's going to take some work. But I think we're in a place now where we have folks that are actively pursuing ways to do that, and it's not just people waiting until they're in their 70s to come back.
Right.
And so yeah, it's changing. But I definitely think for someone at the time that you were looking at it might not have made sense because you didn't know anybody there. But now we're building a community of folks to make it for a softer landing for other people. I know 2 people that are double returnees. Right? They went in their early 20s, came to the States, then went back, and they've been there ever since. And then I know one person, she's been there since grad school. I have another friend who's been there since 2001. And so they've started to build a community so that for those of us who come back, it's a softer landing. It's a little easier for us. And somebody like me who, I'm very Americanized, as you can see.
The accent.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's really helped me to get reacclimated and start the process of building a business and not have any fear in doing so, because I have a network of folks there and people who can point me in the right direction.
Yeah, because ultimately my vision was to go to multiple countries in West Africa. But since the entry was more simple in Ghana, that's why I ended up there.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is pretty dope, because that, even my experience in Ghana, it was the community that I did not have. I have a community now, but I didn't have nothing at the time. And so to hear about the Civil War and all that was just very frightening to me. But as you break it down, because I know, like you said, land, it just increases. It's not going anywhere. I mean, anyone that deals with real estate understands that.
Exactly.
So, but what you just said opened up my mind, because I can get naturalized, which I plan on doing.
Absolutely.
And that's going to just open up the door even more for me. But my concern is, I heard in Freetown, people that were not born in Sierra Leone can only buy land in Freetown. Anything else outside of Freetown, yes. So clear that up.
I don't think that's true. I think it depends on who owns the land that can determine who sells it to. Right. So just much like in Ghana, chiefs own land. So some of the chiefs, not always everywhere, but a lot of chiefs own land, and the chiefs can decide who they sell the land to. Right. So I don't know if that's necessarily the case, considering I actually bought right outside of Freetown myself, and I wasn't born in Sierra Leone. Now my mother technically is on the documentation and paperwork as well, but that is not. I don't think that is the case. So I do think that there are nuance and different things that are coming up, because there have been land disputes previously, because there's been complaints that the government was giving land away to the Creole folks who aren't natives to Sierra Leone. The Creole tribe is a tribe that came in the late 1800s, freed slaves from Nova Scotia, Canada. And so, there's a little bit of, challenges or like conflict there, but I don't know that to be true. As far as I know, you can buy land there if you're not, because I know people who are buying land and that's not the case for them. So yeah, and I definitely think, as we said, I think it's really important to buy real estate wherever you can, but it is cash. You are paying cash. You're not getting mortgages there. You know,
it's because Ghana is barely there.
Right.
Like they're creeping up on that.
Right.
But I can see Sierra Leone is like either you have the money or you don't.
Uh-huh.
Now, when it comes to the disparity, because there's a disparity in Ghana, like either you have or you have not.
Right.
Is it the same way in Sierra Leone, and how do you navigate through that?
Yeah, so the average person in Sierra Leone makes about $50 a month on average, right? And so and that's the minimum wage, but that's also the average, because if it's the minimum wage, that's what everybody's paying.
Right.
Right. So people do correct me all the time and say that's not the average income, that's the minimum wage, but it's the same thing, because if that's the minimum wage, that's what people are willing to pay. So that's what the average income is. You have people there who are former athletes in the United States who are living really large, millionaires in the United States, or multiple 100,000-aires living there. You also have folks who've done really well for themselves in business or in government, because government officials tend to make a lot of money.
What a coincidence.
Same all around the continent, same all around the world, even in the United States as well. We'll put that out there too. That's a different conversation for a different time. But yeah, so you do have those really, really wealthy people. And then there isn't really much of a middle class, right? I think if we're gonna call it a middle class, would be considered probably below the poverty line in the United States in terms of what income people make. Now, there's a rate in adjustment in terms of how much things cost, but when you're talking about the gas prices now, that's where it's really hitting people. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the average person makes about $50 a month. You know, my caretaker, he hasn't been paid from his job 4 months, 5 months. The woman who gave me my COVID vaccination and all of that, she hadn't been paid in 6 months. A nurse that hadn't been paid in 6 months. So yeah, I mean, you find people who haven't been paid, especially if they're working for the government. And so yeah, so you find in the end there's a huge income disparity between the haves and the have-nots for sure. It's like if you've ever been to India before, it's very similar to what you see in India. Yeah, I mean, you don't have as many like millionaires, or there aren't any billionaires in Sierra Leone like maybe in Nigeria. But yeah, there are people who are really well off. The Lebanese who own a lot of businesses there. You'll see their families.
Everywhere.
Yeah, they're all over Africa. They're dealing with a civil war in their country, an ongoing civil war. So many of them flee, and because they collectively pool their money together.
Right. Unity through community, folks.
There it is, unity through community. That's the hashtag right there, right? So yeah, so they so a lot of them are living really well. The restaurant owners, the hotel owners, so you see some Chinese folks, you see some Lebanese, you see some Indian folks who have businesses that are living really well, and then government officials that are Sierra Leonean that are living really well, and then some international business folks who have moved there. And then what I'm seeing is the diasporans are like building kind of a new middle class kind of a situation.
That was my next question.
Those who are working there locally, I have some friends who work for NGOs and things like that. So they're kind of building their own communities, and they're kind of, I guess you kind of consider them middle class, I guess. But they're happy there. Yeah. They're happy. Their kids are enjoying it. The schooling is good, like where they're sending their kids to school, and they themselves seem to be enjoying living there. I mean, our crew is called the Party Starters. If you know, you know.
Shout out.
If you know, you know. Yeah.
I'm going to know. That's what this interview right now has really inspired me. I didn't think I was going to get inspired, to be honest. I was like, Sierra Leone is just another country that I can talk about. But I don't mind grassroots.
Oh, yeah.
And what you're saying is grassroots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people watching right now, they understand that Africa is now and the next. Because everywhere else is so developed, overly developed, more attention has been there. And purposely, Africa has been negated.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
And now we're almost being forced to look, especially at West Africa,
Yeah.
And we need to come together. Because if not, non-African groups, it will be Africa. Yeah. And then we're going to come back to Africa, and now we're going to be renters, just like we were renters in the state.
100%. Yeah, I mean, they've already done it. I mean, look, Africa is the continent with the most resources, human resources and natural resources. The level of ingenuity you have to be able to build things without the same resources that you have in the West. You have some really, really bright minds across all of the continent of Africa, but specifically West Africa, because that's what I can speak to. That's where I've traveled around the most. and then the natural resources in the ground as well. And so people are definitely realizing it. Businesses on the continent are growing at an all-time rate and at an all-time high. And so the Chinese, the Europeans, Indians have all figured out how important the continent of Africa is, and they've already started the process of investing over the last 15 to 20 years.
Right.
And so it's up to us as the diaspora to start to invest ourselves so that we can ensure that, you know, we are also taking part in this wave of growth that's happening on the continent. And this is our people. This is where we all have come from. So we should be, if not anyone else, the ones that are, you know, and you know, benefiting, and also making sure that the people who are benefiting from our investments as well.
Right.
You know?
Sir, we're going to do more. But
Absolutely.
Right now, I want to end it here.
Okay.
Because I want people to go to whatever website you have, go to your page, because you're spitting a lot of knowledge right now. And so tell them where they can find you. Tell them about the party. What do you call it?
The party starters?
The party starter, whatever NGO, let them know.
Oh, no,
I'll also put it in the description box. But folks, I hope you're inspired like I am right now. Because Sierra Leone I was like, okay, we're going to push this away off my list. But you just put it back on my list. Yeah. So, yes, tell them. Bless them.
Yeah, so before I do that, I will say this one thing. Get your dual citizenship, because then you no longer need a visa to go anywhere else in West Africa.
The E.C.O.W.A.S.
Yes. You get your E.C.O.W.A.S passport. You can go to Nigeria, you can go to Ghana, you can go to Sierra Leone, do it all in one trip.
Right.
And you don't have to think about different visas for each country. Because that's the one thing I think that was the most annoying for me, is having to get my visa when I went to Sierra Leone. So like immediately I went and got my dual citizenship. After my second trip, because I kept forgetting to bring all the documents. So my third trip back to Sierra Leone, I got my dual citizenship, and that has made it so that I can go to Ghana, no issue. Like I'll be going from Sierra Leone to Ghana to Nigeria in January, back to Sierra Leone at some point with no visa. I could just move around with ease. So definitely recommend that.
Because there's 14 West African countries that decide to unify in this way.
Yes, the Economic Community of West African States.
Yes.
E.C.O.W.A.S.
I'll be putting that in the description. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
Yes. And folks, go to African Ancestry. Find out where you're from, right? Because what you just said, wherever you're from, you might be gifted land. You might be a descendant of a chief. You don't know. Best case scenario, there is a place for you because you came from somewhere. Folks. So yes, tell them everything.
Yes. So the nonprofit that I talked about is called Launchpad Africa. Just search launchpadafrica.net if I'm not mistaken, or launchpadafrica.org. But anyway, that'll be in the description. You can just look it up on social too, Launchpad Africa. Authentic African on Instagram, authentic_African on YouTube. It's Authentic African. On TikTok, it's authentic__African. I am on TikTok now. And so you can go to all those places. AuthenticAfrican.com will be launching again in January 2023. So depending on when you see this, you'll be able to buy stuff made by African artisans all over the continent of Africa. You'll be able to buy that in the States. And if you are in Africa today, at least in Nigeria and in Sierra Leone, I will be having local sellers and resellers listing their products on my site, so that if you are local to them, they can actually list it there. You can buy the product from them there, and they can deliver it to you locally. So these are all things that I am working on behind the scenes as it pertains to the continent of Africa.
Love it. Folks, plan, do what you gotta do, get rid of the habits, or just put those habits on hold so you can save your money. Go make your dreams come true. Good day. Beautiful people, welcome to vision-reality.com, your authentic Kente cloth liaison. Legacy is expressed in the hand-weaving technique passed down from generation to generation in Africa through Kente cloth. Let us wear legacy. Are you excited? Because I am. So you can go here, learn about the origins of Kente from the chairman of Kente Cloth in Kumasi, or you can just go straight to the store, buy Kente, boom. These are your options, beautiful people. These are your options. OMG, I'm excited. The authentic African handmade Kente Cloth store is now open.